up to you as a player to decide if you want to be playing good decks, or if you want to be playing decks that are fun, or if you want to take a deck that is fun and get so dang good at it that it becomes a good deck. How's it going, everybody? I'm Josh from Elder Drunken Highlander, and I'm coming to you with a deck tech video for yet another weird cEDH brew. We're kind of shifting focus from weird casual brews to weird cEDH brews, and we're going to do more casual stuff kind of in like the Patreon content and in our Discord and cEDH stuff for videos. So if you're wondering why we've done like 7 cEDH videos in a row and the rest of the videos this year are cEDH, it's because people seem to like it, and I've always liked cEDH, so I'm kind of excited for this page we're turning in the channel. It's kind of great. Anyway, new deck. So for those of you not on the Elder Drunken Highlander Discord, which you should be on, I have recently started watching Doctor Who, as in like a year ago I started it, and I'm very, very slow to watch things, so I've been making my way through. I'm like at the very end of Matt Smith as the Doctor, which is kind of exciting. I think I have like one more episode left. Yeah, that episode, I've spoiled everything for myself because I wanted to know what all the cards meant, so I know it's coming up, but I'm still excited to watch it. I'm rambling again, huh? Anyway, I like Doctor Who, and I've been building with the cards a lot. I think the set is fantastic, and I'm really happy that they added this to Magic in a way that seems so goddamn flavorful. And some of the cards work really, really well together. And this is one of those cards. The 15th Doctor, Shurigawa, the new Doctor from the special that just came out, which was fantastic, by the way, is pretty dang good, actually. He says, when he enters the battlefield or attacks, you mill 3 and then put any artifacts, or put a artifact with mana value 2 or 3 from among the cards you just milled into your hand, and the first non-artifact spell you cast each turn has Improvise, which means you can tap your artifacts to pay for it, as if they were colorless sources of mana, like they're power stones, basically, kind of, sort of, not really. And for this deck, I have him partnered with Sarah Jane Smith, who says whenever I cast Historic Spell, I investigate. This ability triggers only once each turn. So she makes a bunch of clues, which you can then use to improvise spells for the 15th Doctor, and then the two of them combined give us a fair bit of card advantage as well, which is really nice. It's nice to have some card advantage in the command zone for Jeskai, not gonna lie. The deck is doing your typical Jeskai Breach things. You know how it be doing Jeskai Breach things, but you might notice there's some spicy cards in here, like this Glasspool Mimic or this Underscore Goblin, and you might be thinking, why are these cards in here? Well, when our commanders get cast, when they see each other get cast, they do two things. They mill our library and make an infinite number of clues. So we can draw a bunch of cards and make a ton of clues. If we blink Sarah Jane Smith as part of a Hullbreaker Horror loop, for example, we can make a ton of clues and then use those clues to draw our deck. If we blink our commander with the 15th Doctor with the Hullbreaker Horror loop, we mill our deck and put a bunch of mana rocks and stuff into our hand. So we have Hullbreaker Horror in here to do that, and we also have good old Cloudstone Curio. Curio says that we can play a creature and bounce a creature. So with stuff like Underscore Goblin or Dockside Extortionist, we can make infinite mana and then use that infinite mana to play out our commanders and win. I'm not sure if Underscore Goblin is good enough for the deck. It's kind of just like a thing that I stuck in here because I had a slot. I was on Fairy, what is it? These things. I was on Cloud of Fairies for a little bit too, just because I was like, oh yeah, free creature that kind of does something. Maybe that'll be good, but it wasn't. So I actually haven't really drawn Underscore Goblin. I don't know if it's good in the deck, but it's in there for now. Anyway, the idea is that you play a creature that pays for itself and then some, then play another creature, bounce them back and forth, make infinite mana, then add one of your commanders into the mix and either make infinite clues or infinitely mill your deck and put artifacts into your hand, depending on what you want to do. It's actually kind of nice having the two options to either draw your deck, which is obviously the better one, or mill and put stuff into your hand. Milling and putting stuff into your hand still means that you can go off with Savine's Reclamation, and then the drawing thing is just the better way to go off. But if there's like a Bowmasters or an Eidolon Rhetoric or some like a Notion Thief or a Narset on the board, and you can't just draw your deck, it's nice to have the other slightly less good option. Like, yeah, you could have stuff like a Dranith, which prevents you from casting this from Flashback too, but in that case, you can go for Sarah Jane Smith and go with a bunch of clues. So it's kind of nice having the two options. At first, I was on Joe Grant because I wanted a little extra synergy in the cycling, putting a card that we put into our hand with our 15th Doctor into our graveyard and then drawing a new card seemed kind of sweet, and I liked that she got kind of big and punched people. But I went back to Sarah Jane after a bunch of people told me, what do you do, and play Sarah Jane, because they're right. She's just better. So we have things like Glasspool Mimic to clone our own Dockside. We can't use Phyrexia Metamorph. It's an artifact creature, so it doesn't work with Cloudstone Curio. We can't use Phantasmal Image either because it'll die as soon as the Cloudstone Curio puts it back in our hand. So we have limited options. Something like Glasspool Mimic is one of the cards we kind of have to run. The card's also just sweet, especially with a lot of really good ETBs like Goblin Engineer. Goblin Engineer lets us put our Curio in the graveyard and then get it back the next turn, which is really, really hype. And it's also really good with one of our backup plans, which is Grinding Station. Grinding Station acts like another Brain Freeze with our Breach, milling 3 cards, getting an artifact that costs 0 out of the graveyard using those 3 cards to cast it, tapping it for mana if we can, making a bunch of mana, and then repeating that process until we find another way to win in our graveyard with Breach. I like it especially because while we're filling our graveyard with our commander and attacking, we can use him to put a Grinding Station into our hand, which is really, really sweet. Just want to really quickly touch upon Defense Grid here. Normally, I would say run Revel in Silence over Defense Grid in Jeskai decks, but because we are putting artifacts that cost 2 or 3 mana into our hand with our commander, Defense Grid is just sweet. Another way to win that we have that works pretty well with all of our clones is Spellseeker. We can use Spellseeker to find ourselves an Ephemerate. Ephemerate then blinks Spellseeker and gets us a Muddle the Mixture, which we can discard to find Breach, or an Enlightened Tutor, which we can cast to search for Breach, or a Gamble if we want to be, well, a gambler. Then Ephemerate blinks Spellseeker again on the following turn, and we can use that to find a Brain Freeze and win that way. Actually, you know what? One of our commanders is 2 mana. We really don't need to be running this underscore goblin. We're gonna get it out of here right now, live in the video. We're putting Final Fortune back. I don't know why I cut this card. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, Spellseeker. So you can Ephemerate Spellseeker, get a Final Fortune, then the Spellseeker Ephemerate resolves again and gets you whatever you need to tutor for the combo to win, which is another great thing about Spellseeker too, which is why I've been running Final Fortune the whole time, totally, completely, yes. Ephemerate is also just really good with all the other ETBs that we have. Clones are synergistic with this stuff as well. Dockside, obviously. There's Goblin Engineer getting us a Cloudstone Curio and or a Grinding Station, or just a Mana Rock. Goblin Matron getting the Dockside or the Goblin Engineer. We have Recruiters as well, both of which also get us the important stuff that we need, and a Ranger Captain of Eos to get all 3 of our 1-drops. 2 Hullbreaker Horrors too is just disgusting, but that's kind of egregious. We don't need to talk about that in the video. Instants and Sorcery is pretty standard. Big fan of Rite of Flame in decks like this where you need to power out Mana Rocks. It's just a sweet card. Sometimes it says have a Mana Rock on turn 1, and I like that. And sometimes it just says go off a little bit faster, and I like that too. Sweet with Breach as well. It's just a great card. People should run it more. Transmute in here to get the Curio or the Grinding Station. Sometimes the One Ring too. We're also on Seagate Restoration, which is a card that I think needs to see more play in non-ad nauseum decks. It's just a sweet card. Draws you a bunch of cards sometimes. Otherwise, it's just a land. Like, I can afford to run that in 3 colors. Our interaction pool is pretty standard. Nothing fancy going on here. We're not on Force of Negation because we're a fairly proactive deck, and I'd rather run something like this Final Fortune that I've been on the whole time instead. That being said, we are on 27 lands, which is more than I normally like to put in my proactive decks. I'm a 26 land stan myself, but 2 of them are MDFC, so I feel like it's fine. We're on City of Traders for those rocks, and besides that, no real notable lands. I was on Spire of Industry, but I actually cut it. Touch the Spirit Realm, another card that I just want to touch upon. You can blink a creature. That's very good in this deck, blinking a creature. Also, sometimes you O-ring things, but I very rarely see that side cast. Usually it's just blinking something. That's it. That's the whole deck. You might wonder why I don't have a cool fancy name for this deck. It's just a 15th Doctor cEDH. Besides the obvious SEO reasons of someone just Googling the 15th Doctor cEDH and looking for a deck and finding mine, hopefully not another deck that's bad. Well, about that, we'll get to that later. I named it that just because I don't really plan on playing this deck, so I didn't really feel like giving it a fancy name. And I don't really plan on playing this deck because I don't think that it's a deck that is worth actually playing. It was fun to build, and it's definitely a good deck, but in my opinion, a lot of decks that are fun to build and good decks, like most of those Francisco decks that I built, are just not worth actually playing. Look, just because a deck can win cEDH games doesn't mean it should be a cEDH deck that you play. Unless, of course, you really like it. If you just like the deck for whatever reason, if Jeskai Cloudstone Curio is your jam, if the 15th Doctor is what you're super into, like, I don't know why, I feel like Vidrock is a better Jeskai Cloudstone Curio deck. I'm getting off topic. But if this kind of deck is what you really, really want to be playing, then power to you, go play it. But if you're just trying to play the best decks, then this is not a deck that's worth considering. It's a cool deck. I learned some things while brewing it, and I had a lot of fun doing that, and it's been fun recording this video. But unless you're just like, yeah, I really want to play the 15th Doctor. Doctor Who cEDH decks only. I'm on River Song. I'm on the 15th Doctor. I'm on the 14th Doctor food chain, baby. Like, you can totally do that, but just know that you're picking a deck that I wouldn't say is suboptimal, but a deck choice that is, I'd say, unwise. The thing about competitive Commander is the free-for-all nature of the format makes it very difficult to make objective decisions about which decks are actually good. Like, we know Rogsai is a good deck. We know Tim Necrom or Blue Farm is a good deck, right? We know that decks like Najila are good decks, but we don't know like exactly how good they are compared to something like River Song. I will say, like, I'm not planning on playing River Song again, just because drawing from the bottom of the library was sickening, absolutely sickening. If you're maining that deck now, then wow, you have mental fortitude greater than mine. But I'm not really planning on playing that deck again. And the reason for that is because I think that while it definitely was a deck that was in a niche and doing something that no other deck is doing and doing something that's good enough to top four a pretty competitive cEDH tournament, I don't think it's a deck that like I personally can take any further than it has been taken. So I'm kind of leaving it alone. And I think this is another deck like that where like you can do pretty well with this deck, but it's not a deck that you're going to be doing like extremely consistently well with. It's a deck that you can do well with, but not a deck that if your job is playing cEDH, you're not going to pick up this deck and main it. It's just not going to be a thing. If you're playing cEDH for fun, then yeah. I guess the TLDR of what I'm trying to say is any deck can top 16 a tournament, but only good decks can consistently win tournaments. And it's up to you as a player to decide if you want to be playing good decks, or if you want to be playing decks that are fun, or if you want to take a deck that is fun and get so dang good at it that it becomes a good deck, which is definitely a thing, but also I would say the players that we see doing that have weaknesses. We can look at Shauna on Niv Mizzet, for example, a deck that a lot of people are pretty low on right now, and we can see that she's clearly the best Niv Mizzet player in the world, but I feel like a lot of the limitations that we see in her win rate when it's been kind of dropping is because she's sticking to a deck that is a deck that is more difficult to get certain things out of the game than other decks that can just do that kind of stuff more consistently. A lot of people will say there are a lot of things more important than deck choice in cEDH, but if you're just playing a deck that's not as good as other decks in your niche, then and you're trying to win tournaments, then I don't know, that's an L. Like if you're brewing like Francisco Crom or something and you're not just doing it for fun, then you should spend your time and energy working on Rogsai or Tevish Crom instead, because there's just better decks out there, you know? No hate to Francisco. I do think Francisco Thrasios and Francisco Jeska are pretty sick. And Francisco Dargo, apparently. That's what people have told me. I'm going to take the word for it because they're smarter than me at this kind of stuff. Now I'm super rambling. If you enjoy this kind of discussion, we have a Discord where we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. You can come chat with me and all the other members of the channel and the moderators in the Discord about Magic. We love to just chat. We have LFG. It's been popping. We're also doing a tournament on Monday the 18th. We're streaming that. The slots are already all full because cEDH tournaments are popular. But if you want to be in for future tournaments, or if you just want to tune in to watch the stream, join the Discord and check that out. We have Patreon too. If you want to follow our Patreon, you can get perks like exclusive videos where we'll be putting a lot of our casual content now, and also things like deck checks if you want us to look at your deck and give some advice. Our $10 patrons have access to that, or just your name in the videos, which are probably scrolling around somewhere right now. Then join our Patreon. Other than that, we have links in the description. You can check out Card Trader if you want to help with the channel, or our sponsor, Original Print Proxies, who makes amazing tokens like these mana tokens, which you'll probably need if you're going to be storming off. I didn't show those very well. If you're going to be storming off in Jeskai, you might want to get tokens like these for your mana and your treasure and stuff like that. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. And remember, stay janky, my friends. Unless you're trying to win a tournament. In that case, stay meta, my friends.